There we go. Okay, so I would ask for approval of the agenda.
I approve.
Great. Is there a seconder?
I will second it.
Great.
Colleen.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. We'll consider that approved. I'll share the minutes from last year's AGM. And I would ask for a motion to approve.
I so move.
Excellent. Is there a seconder?
I can second that motion, Colleen.
Excellent. Okay. I'm very happy to deliver a report on our activities over the last year. I will try and keep it short, but as I was going through it, I realized again this year that for a group of folks who are doing things off the side of their desks, we seem to be achieving and punching well above our weight. So I share this. Excellent, folks can see that.
Yes, sir.
Actually, you know what? I realized I needed to do one more thing. Stop share. All right, try that again. All right. So again, our group continues to really be focused on community well-being and trying to continue to build on the narrative that many are contributing to right now, that poverty impacts us all. And again, demonstrating that we must operate collectively to resolve, again, longstanding issues that we can deal with. They are not impossible. The political options are out there, and we need to continue to push them. With that, we are a political group, and don't shy away from the fact that poverty is a political issue. And it is policy that created this environment, and policy will certainly undo it. So with that, again, we continue to mobilize as a group of community members and organizations to work collaboratively towards community well-being and a better quality of life for everyone. Again, we exist to connect a community of action-oriented organizations. We're committed to social inclusion and building a Nova Scotia where no one lives in poverty. Our vision ultimately is that we will eradicate poverty in Nova Scotia. And we continue to work as strategically and as collaboratively as we can towards those ends. Some of our core areas or political priorities involve income, social security, and dignified employment, working towards, again, a livable income. Housing security, of course, is a huge issue that we continue to try and work on and push and advance advocacy on. Public education, health, and social services, again, recognizing that all of these issues are interconnected. We must have high quality public services in order to tackle poverty, including dealing with issues such as mental health, robust universal access to education, early childhood learning, and again, making sure that we have public services that meet folks' needs. Food security, again, an issue that continues to be a huge issue in Nova Scotia and across Canada as cost of living increases, and needing really to create a robust policy network and policy options towards greater food security. And public transportation, recognizing that Nova Scotia is 50% rural, opportunities to travel and move across the province for employment, work, quality of life, medical appointments is limited, and that we do need a more centralized approach to public transportation. Stark reminder, currently in the political climate that we need to continue to drive home and face, and we've attempted to as well, is that the political narrative is on fixing, in our premier's words, fixing healthcare. But again, there is no fixing of healthcare unless we are dealing with the social determinants of health. The graph you're seeing was a study conducted by a group of physicians and published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal in 2018. Which clearly demonstrates the fact that a reduction in stagnation on spending on social services has dramatically increased spending on healthcare services across provinces. We know that if we are to substantially fix healthcare, that dealing with the social determinants of health and poverty needs to be a part of that equation. As our allies and partners at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives have continued to point to, is that poverty in Nova Scotia costs a loss in productivity of close to $200 billion a year, as well as accessing government services. It remains fiscally reckless to allow poverty to fester in Nova Scotia. And that is a point that we continually are trying to make. Our activities over the year, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on many of these. We've continued to focus on housing with our Housing is Health campaign, with some, again, coupled with lots of organizing, some success in that area. During the election, we really tried to put a focus on poverty and recognize that, again, what we need is policy, not more charity, to be able to deal with some of these challenges. With our partners, we've advocated this year for climate justice and ensuring that a climate justice lens is approached in government policy to climate change. And we've continued to offer public education through our webinar series, engaging Nova Scotians in core critical discourse on the type of province we could have if we made different policy decisions. Again, to go into a little more detail, our Housing is Health campaign launched about a month after the release of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives report on keys to a housing secure future. Drawing from the core messages from that report, we built an open letter as well as some social media content and used our networks to distribute the letter as well as tried to garner some media attention from it. Through those actions, we were able to gain over 500 signatures on an open letter. We were able to get that letter to the powers that be, and I'll play a short video of the response that we got.
Mr. Speaker, hundreds of individuals and dozens of organizations around the province have just lately written an open letter to the Premier under this heading. It's titled Housing is Health. This includes a wide variety of organizations, the Family Services Association of the western part of the province, the Community Health Board in Cape Breton, the Truro Homeless Outreach Society, the College of Social Workers for the whole province. And the letter asks, among other things, for the Premier to institute permanent rent control. And the letter says, we call on you to accept that housing is a human right and that housing is health. So will the Premier agree with the hundreds of signatories to this letter that the government can't actually fix health care without protecting people's right to not be priced out of their homes? And I will tail that document. Thank you.
The Honourable Premier.
There are lots of moving parts to this issue, there's no question. I have tremendous respect for the organizations that penned that letter. They do incredible work in their communities, and I thank them for that. And working with government, or our government will certainly work with them to get what we can done. But certainly, there's no dispute on whether there's a housing crisis. There's no dispute that it's been brewing for quite some time. And I also think there should be no dispute that there are multiple parts to solve.
Ultimately, again, we haven't seen all 94 recommendations from that core report implemented at this time, but certainly this initiative, coupled with all of the other organizations fighting hard on the ground, did lead to a reversal in Premier Houston's policy regarding rent control. And again, I think it speaks to the power of collective political action. And what we can do when we organize towards a specific ends. Again, one of our other major initiatives this year was during the election. We were able to put forward a campaign video to circulate throughout the election, again, to support Nova Scotians in engaging their MLAs and their candidates in a conversation around poverty. The campaign page, which is still active today, Policy Not Charity, featured a video, which I will play, talking about how we need to approach this issue, and a series of policy options that should be championed by everyone in our province, but specifically those who are making decisions on our behalf. So I'll move forward and I'll play the video in case you haven't seen it.
As Nova Scotians, we pride ourselves in our kindness, compassion, and strong sense of community.
Despite our strong values of connection, we've made political choices with serious hidden consequences to our economy, communities, and public health. These choices have left over 100,000 people suffering in poverty.
Rising inequality and the continued class divide between the rich and the poor have allowed the voices of the most vulnerable, particularly those of our racialized communities and children and youth, to go unnoticed. Poverty is felt deeply in Nova Scotia, creating social conditions that manifest themselves in many harmful ways. We've continued to make political choices that expect people to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, despite the clear story that our current political choices have created unequal opportunity, making this an impossibility. The global pandemic has made matters worse, with the most vulnerable people feeling the greatest burden, with many having to choose between working in risky and vulnerable environments or protecting their families and community from the spread of the virus, losing wages in the process. This has an impact on the quality of life for all Nova Scotians, as the cost of poverty is roughly $2 billion from a lost productivity and the cost of excessive government services. We can make different political choices. What is needed now is progressive policy and the courage for change, not more charity. By investing in people, we can not only create greater well-being, but a more inclusive and equitable economy. We have the tools to end poverty. Now what we need is the right policy. Does your MLA have it?
So again, the website got over 1,000 hits. The video continues to receive views, and again, really want to challenge the narrative that we can resolve this issue through a patchwork of charities. As great as the work is, what we continually need to push for is a fundamental shift in the policy in this province and country towards these ends. And this video is aimed at building momentum towards that goal. We did some work this year, and I'm happy to see Emma Norton here with our partners to be able to push for climate justice lens. I'm putting out some releases, particularly in response to Nova Scotia Power's application and money grab to stack profits off the back of particularly marginalized and poor groups who would disproportionately be impacted by that fee rate increase. And again, pushing for a lens of climate justice, making sure that the brunt of the adjustment of climate change is not felt by the most vulnerable in our province. We received some OK media attention from some of that release, and we're able to get that narrative out there. I'm gonna jump through some of that just because we are limited on time, but we'll circulate the presentation afterwards as well. We also, again, working with our partners as the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act were being passed, to again push for a climate justice lens. Again, there were a number of amendments that were pushed to this act by various groups. The only amendment that won the day at the end of the day was an amendment put forward by our group at Law Amendments Committee, as well as by the NDP and the Committee of the Whole, to build a really focused strategy on environmental racism. So again, with partnership from many folks on the ground, we were able to have some victories in terms of what we're trying to achieve. throughout the year, again, we offered some really good learning, again, on making some core connections on poverty and how it impacts many of these different areas, and featured webinars on the shadow pandemic, domestic violence, and COVID-19, examining the, as well as, again, continuing to focus on continuing care and the challenges there. A focus on climate justice and the impacts on those with vulnerabilities, and the impact on mental health that both COVID and poverty have had. Again, well attended. Those are all available on our YouTube channel, and they continue to get good hits. In terms of what we have planned for next year, we're going to continue with the webinar series focusing on human rights and poverty. We're really looking forward to working with Dow Legal Aid to build an anti-eviction map. The idea would be to create a visual story on the need to treat housing as a right, and be able to map out where particularly evictions, particularly illegal evictions, are happening, just to show the precarity of the situation. So we believe we have some data that we'll be able to begin with to start that campaign, but we're just kind of getting the pieces laid out. We want to continue to do some digital campaigning. We've got a group of professionals coming together now, teachers, social workers, some physicians and nurses as well, as to really speak to the impact of poverty on service delivery. And so there is some mobilization now to build a campaign around that. And we want to continue to engage. One of the things I'm excited for is we did just well, not officially hired yet, but we will be hiring a coordinator role, which again will help professionalize these services. As I mentioned, most of this was done off the side of our desks over the last year. So it will be nice to have some paid staff, as limited as it is, just one day a week, to be able to help us advance our goals and agenda and keep us just a little bit more organized and keep the momentum moving forward. Again, if you're not currently active and involved, please reach out. We'd love to have you join in some way, either attending regular coalition meetings, joining and trying to get our working groups flowing, or there is space on the coordinating committee as well, which we'll have some nominations of later. I am happy to pause there and take any questions.
I would just say, Alex, nice presentation, nice recap of the year.
Yeah, lovely. Very straightforward.
I think there's a question there. I just see M. McPhee, so I'm sorry, I don't know.
Hi. Yes. Hi, Alec. Thanks so much for that overview. I'm very new to learning about your organization, but I'm really impressed with all the work that you did. And not to get too lost in the weeds, but when you talked about the housing petition that was presented to government, you'd mentioned Cape Breton Community Health Board that had signed. Do you remember which chapter?
I can, the webpage isn't live anymore. I can go back and look at the letter.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
I'm part of a Cape Breton Community Health Board, and I didn't remember it coming across our desk, but wanted to definitely support it and bring it to, attention in my group. But
yeah.
Okay.
No, we had good participation in that letter for sure. All right. If there are no other questions, I would ask for a motion to approve the chair's report.
So moved.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second, Geraldine.
Great. Thanks, Geraldine. Any other questions? All right, let's keep moving. This was our financial statement for the year. We continue to have support from CUPE Nova Scotia and CUPE National, excuse me, who have continued over the last 3 years to give us about $10,000 to be able to operate through, which is not insignificant at all. This year, we were able to bring the Nova Scotia Federation of Labor on board as well. So that moved us into a position where we were able to hire a coordinator. But again, all of the funds we receive right now have gone into campaigning or running some of our events. You can see a breakdown here with what we spent in this last year with a carryover into the new year. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions on that. All right, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the financial update.
Also move the financial update by Colleen Cameron.
Vicky's seconding.
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, any other discussions?
So this budget runs us through to the end of December, does it?
No, we're set up on the government calendar, so April to March.
Okay, so we have about $3,400 to play with for the fall and winter.
No, we actually have 18,000.
Oh, where did I miss that?
It's not in this report because that is the new financial year.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Next then is a report from the nominating committee, which was Nan, who wasn't able to join us. So Colleen is the committee at this point in time. So Colleen is, I'll hand it over to you to read the names.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Happy to fill in here. I have 3 nominations. Ashley Hinchy with PADS Community Network, Suzanne McNeil, Justice for Workers, and CC Harbenfellner, Acorn, Nova Scotia. Those are 3 nominations. I would ask for nominations from the floor. Are there any nominations from the floor? Any final nominations from the floor? If not, Ashley Hinchy, Suzanne McNeil, and Cece Harbenfellner are our new members of the steering committee. Thank you very much.
Sorry, would ask just for a vote,
Oh.
just an all in favor for those nominations.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Excellent. And any nays? Excellent. I'm welcome everyone to the coordinating committee. As you can see, there's tons of work that we are can be doing, and I'm happy to have more hands on board. That closes out the business section of our AGM, and I'm happy to move us over to our speaker for the day. So just give me 1 sec so I can get my bio ready to go here. Excellent. So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Elizabeth K. Rating Bird to lead us in a conversation around universal basic income. Mandy is a professor emeritus in the School of Communication Sciences and Disorders at Dalhousie University and a speech language pathologist by training. Her research and teaching have focused on child language development, particularly cultural and linguistical diverse children and youth with language and cognitive difficulties. She's a longtime proponent of basic income as a poverty elimination strategy and advocates for basic income through her roles as the Basic Income Nova Scotia Chair of the Steering Committee of the Coalition Canada Basic Income. Okay. My Zoom went down for a minute and I just had a flashing circle, so I got worried, but it seems like we're all still here. Is that right? Or are you frozen?
Yeah, I'm still here. I also got weird.
I think the whole thing went down. I'm not even sure where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everything froze for a moment.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we're back. So Mandy, are you able to share your screen?
I can share my screen.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
We can. So
Yes, ma'am.
I'll turn it over to you then.
Okay.
How come I can't see?
Can you see my screen?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm all right. I'm just sort of moving pictures around so that I can see my screen a little bit better. I didn't hear the introduction of, so I just wanted to let you know that I'm a retired professor from Dalhousie University from the School of Communication Sciences and Disorders. And I've been an advocate for basic income for a number of years, both at the provincial, regional, and national levels. Also, I really appreciate the report that you gave, Alec, on your activities. I know that what I'm going to be saying is really preaching to the converted or to the choir, and I think that we have many common interests. I also want to mention, because my name sometimes confuses people, Kay was my maiden name, Raining Bird, a married name. My children are Raining Birds, and they're members of the Cree tribe in Montana. And I also have in-laws, Mi'kmaq in-laws here in Nova Scotia, but I myself am not Indigenous, so I didn't want you to think that I was. So that being said, I was wondering if people could just sort of shout out what they see as important indicators of well-being.
Access to clean water.
Okay.
And healthy food.
Healthy food, clean water.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Access to housing.
Housing.
A sense of social security, social networking, and connectedness.
Connectedness, social networking, and security.
Access to healthcare.
Access to healthcare. So go ahead, please.
Just when you say indicators, lots of civic activity taking place. Civil society organizations are well functioning and all working together.
Great.
Yep.
Well, I'm hoping that what I say in the next little while is dovetailing with some of these important indicators. And I would agree with everything that's been said up till now. I think basic income can contribute. It's not a panacea, but it can contribute to the well-being of both individuals and communities. I wanted to start with the basic income we want, and this is the basic income that is supported by Basic Income Nova Scotia, Coalition Canada Basic Income, and also the Atlantic Canada Basic Income Group, which was recently formed. And I believe you all have seen the consensus statement, and we'll be talking about it after my presentation. Basic income can be defined as a direct payment from government made to people who need it, distributed with minimal bureaucracy. And so it ensures that everyone has a sufficient income to meet their basic needs, participate in society, and live with dignity, regardless of work status. We see it as an essential component of a just society. These listed here are the always have a hard time seeing this. I'm sorry, I want to just change something here. So these are the principles that we see as important to a basic income. I can't. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and then reshare. I apologize. Okay.
I can also share if that's helpful.
I can do it. I apologize for that.
No worries.
Okay, I'm going to share it this way for a little while. These are the principles that we think are important to define a basic income that is implemented by governments. The first principle is that it should be universally accessible. That is, that everyone who needs it gets it. The second is that it's unconditional, subject only to income and residency requirements. The third is that it's an essential component of a broad safety net of universal supports and services. So all of the work that you've been doing that was reported today is completely consistent with the existence of a basic income. It would replace income assistance, but not other vital social programs, and it should coexist alongside efforts such as yours to strengthen social supports in other ways. It must be sufficient, so we advocate for a basic income that is at a livable level, which is above the poverty line, and enhanced for people with disabilities and indexed to the cost of living. It must be responsive to changing circumstances, respectful of individual autonomy, and respectful of Indigenous self-determination and autonomy. Now I'm going to talk a bit about why I think we need a basic income. The first reason is that way too many people are living in poverty. The most recent CCPA report stated that 24.3% of Nova Scotian children are living in poverty, and this is their breakdown according to federal electoral district areas. We know that some groups are more vulnerable than others. This graph is from 2014, but the same picture can be seen today. So Indigenous people, recent immigrants, people with disabilities, single parents, and very notably, unattached people 45 to 64 are well above the poverty line for all people in Canada. This is a graph from CCPA as well, and this shows how out of sync in Nova Scotia poverty rates for Indigenous and Black children are. The dotted line is the line for all children in Nova Scotia, and you can see that children on reserve, Black children, and all other groups of Indigenous children are well above that line. So racism and colonial practices have caused high poverty in these communities. And as Alec was saying throughout his presentation, poverty exists because of the policy choices we've made, and we can make different policy choices. If sufficient, a basic income would dramatically reduce poverty by providing an income floor for everybody when they need it. Why do we need a basic income? Because it's a social determinant of health. Alec again discussed how important it is to address social determinants of health in our advocacy actions. Income is an important, maybe the most important social determinant of health. It's the means of gaining access to other social determinants such as education, food, housing, recreational activities, and other societal resources. Poverty is the absence of adequate income to provide for your basic needs. Poverty is the best predictor of early illness, early hospitalizations, longer hospital stays, and earlier death. It is a reliable predictor of substance abuse, food insecurity, poor education outcomes, and for some, trouble with the law. This is a quote from Hugh Siegel, a longtime advocate of basic income, who was one of the authors of the discussion paper that defined the Ontario pilot project. And we know that prevention is a critical piece of ensuring that people are healthy. And yet much of our tax dollars is focused on intervention, not prevention. As this quote from a recent study states, people don't just need access to doctors, hospitals, and drugs to be healthy. They also need healthy homes, healthy food, adequate transportation, and education. In terms of a basic income, a steady income, safe neighborhoods, and a home life free from domestic violence. These are things that hospitals and doctors can't provide. Basic income is an important prevention tool. It would improve people's health. A study by Evelyn Forget has shown that 8.5% of there was an 8.5% decrease in hospital visits with people who received a basic income in the Income Project. A more recent study by Kalnitsky et al. Of the same data showed that there was additional 17.5% decrease in domestic violence and violent crimes with the receipt of a basic income. And a study in Finland of the pilot project that just finished showed that people have more hope, report better mental illness, and report greater trust in government as a result. Another reason we need a basic income is because income assistance, or welfare as it's called in some provinces or territories, is and always has been insufficient. These are the current rates for income assistance. I've outlined some of them in red. Enhanced from 686 for an individual who rents or owns their own place to $950 per month for a person with a disability. Clearly inadequate. This shows just how inadequate it is. The red boxes identify that a single person considered employable receiving income assistance in Nova Scotia is receiving only 38% of the current federal poverty line, the market basket measure. And if you look at LIM, it's even worse, only 32%. And just to clarify, as you move to the right in those bars, you can see how inadequate, insufficient welfare rates are for people who have a disability or are a single parent with one child or a couple with two children, well below the poverty line, whatever poverty line you choose. We all are aware of the community services transformation process that took place over a number of years. As Vince Calderhead noted, the transformation process did not transform income assistance. Welfare rates remained essentially the same as a result of that transformation process, and for some, the situation actually worsened in his analysis. And this shows how income assistance rates have not changed over time in Nova Scotia. This is somewhat old data, but we know that in the last budget of the province, income assistance rates did not increase at all. So basic income would provide a sufficient income floor for all who need it. Why do we need a basic income? Another reason is because the current system mistreats people. We act like some people deserve our help. So seniors, children, people with disability, not enough help to bring you above the poverty line necessarily, but you deserve, these groups deserve more help than other groups. For example, as we saw in the figure previously, employable unattached adults. We act like people on income assistance can't be trusted. They need scrutiny, they need oversight. We act like it's a person's fault if they're poor and unemployed. They should get a job, get a better job, try harder, do more, stop being so lazy. We require them to report on their job search activities, accept any job that's offered, attend job training and money management, as if they had an adequate amount of money, they would be able, or they would have money that they could manage. Now they have to make unacceptable choices. Eliminating scrutiny and letting people make choices about the supports they need increases the likelihood a person will find a permanent job. This is the result of a study that was recently done in the Netherlands, where they modified the current welfare system that to just give money to people, so eliminating scrutiny, or providing an array of supports and allowing people to choose those supports. Both of those together could be particularly useful. A basic income would give people dignity, not judgment, regardless of employment status. Another reason we need a basic income, I believe, is because a job does not prevent poverty, as all of you know. The minimum wage in Nova Scotia currently is $12.95 an hour. Doesn't even apply to all workers. If you're tipped, then it doesn't necessarily apply. This little calculation I did shows that if you earn a minimum wage, you earn about $22,841 a year, and that is below limb levels for family sizes of 1, 2, or 4, and below the Halifax MBM for all but a single person. So if you have dependents, then having a full-time job with minimum wage isn't going to keep you out of poverty. And jobs are not always available, as we know. Unemployment rates change, but unemployment rates are always there. And currently, across Canada, 24% of jobs are precarious. That means that they're temporary or part-time, or people are self-employed and their self-employment may fail at any moment. These sorts of jobs have few benefits or protections. They're not unionized jobs, and many of the people working in these jobs are one paycheck away from poverty or living in poverty. And of course, we know that not all work is paid work. So the volunteer work you're doing for this organization is valuable and important work, and yet not valued in our society. So a basic income would give people more choice, nurture entrepreneurs and gig workers, and value unpaid work. Why do we need a basic income? In my opinion, because Canadians want it. A majority of Canadians in a very recent poll have shown that they're in favor of a basic income. And this is particularly true, as you can see, in the Atlantic provinces and Quebec, but it's true in almost all provinces. I want to now quickly address two myths about basic income. One is that basic income is too expensive, and I have to acknowledge Pierre Stevens, who helped develop this argument. And the second myth is that basic income means people will not work. So in terms of it's too expensive, it is expensive, but is it too expensive? So the Parliamentary Budget Officer in 2018 was asked to write a report on the cost of basic income, and he came to the conclusion that at the time a basic income would cost about $76 billion. So that's expensive. And on the left-hand side, you can see some of the criteria that he used in defining a basic income. More recently, and he has done another report that actually suggested that a basic income would cost about $88 billion for the year 2022 to 23. So he's increased his estimate given the COVID situation and inflation difficulties. But I'm going to address this particular gross cost estimate. So what the Parliamentary Budget Officer did was he looked at what the government was already spending both at the national and at the provincial levels that might offset the gross cost. He suggested that if you included the elderly in a basic income and rolled in CCB and tax credits, that you could offset it by $32 billion, and that also provincial expenditures calculated by Evelyn Forget would do an additional $20 billion offsetting of that cost. So the net cost then, I'm not trying to argue that these are the parameters for a basic income that we should be pushing, nor that these are the programs that should offset it. I'm just showing you what the Parliamentary Budget Officer did. So the net cost is $24 billion. That's a lot of money. Other people have also costed a basic income. So while the Parliamentary Budget Office report suggested that that net cost would be deficit spending, other studies have developed models of costing a basic income that are revenue neutral. And they're revenue neutral because these studies have suggested that we move towards a more progressive taxation system. And I won't go into the details of that, but there are ways to change our tax system to make it more, to reduce the disparity in incomes that exists in our society and to pay for a basic income. Another thing to consider when you're thinking about paying for a basic income is that there's cost savings that will occur. So, for example, Alec talked about the CCBPA study, recent study that showed that Nova Scotia spent about $2 billion a year on the effects of poverty. And these include health effects, crime effects, and we talked a little bit earlier in this, and I talked a little bit earlier in this presentation about how both of those areas would have been found to reduce with a basic income. So there, at least, and and probably in all of the areas looked at by the CCPA, there would be at some point future cost savings. Also consider that there would be economic benefits from providing a basic income to people. People who would receive a basic income would be spending their money locally. These are not the people who would be traveling to the Cayman Islands to hang out or other areas. They would be spending their money locally, and local businesses would benefit from that local spending and could indeed perhaps expand, hire new people because of that local benefit. So it could provide economic benefits to many communities in Nova Scotia, for example. And this has been shown in studies that have been done of the Canada Child Benefit, that these economic benefits do occur. Also consider when you're thinking about the cost of a basic income that we make many expensive choices, policy choices. So this is just some of the, I wouldn't take these as accurate necessarily in all cases, but these are estimates of some of the spending that the federal government does. And note also that in the last point, corporate taxes have decreased from 2000 to the present day, net taxes from a rate of about 28% to a rate of about 15% today. And as one study recently showed, every 1% cut in corporate taxes costs the federal government $2 billion. So fairly taxing large corporations could do a lot to pay for a basic income. So again, it's a policy choice. The second myth I wanted to address is that of people claiming that if people received a basic income, they would not work. This just isn't the case, and it reflects, I mean, this view reflects, again, this negative, stigmatizing belief about poor people. So research shows that indeed there is a slight reduction in employment rates with a basic income, and that reduction can be accounted for by two groups. The first group are people who choose to stay in school, return to school, or get additional trainings in areas that they're interested in. The second is people who choose to provide care to loved ones. So these are choices that are good for our society, not choices that we should be concerned about. I want to give the last word to a quote done by Ferdowsi in a study by Ferdowsi, the Ontario Basic Income Pilot. And they said that for a significant number of participants, basic income purportedly proved to be transformational, fundamentally reshaping their living standards as well as their sense of self-worth and hope for a better future. I have two slides that talk about some of the things that your group might be interested in doing to help advocate for basic income. Here's some websites where you can find more information about a basic income. I know that you're going to consider signing the consensus statement of the Atlantic Canada Basic Income Group today, and I certainly hope that my talk has helped you in making that decision. And here's some other suggestions about what might be done. Note that there's several bills that are going through the Senate and the House at this point in time, seeking to establish a framework for a basic income, a Canada-wide basic income. So if you can talk to senators in your area to support Senator Kim Page's bill in the Senate, which is currently the one that's being addressed more, is sort of farther along in the timeline, I guess I would say it that way, then that would be very helpful. And also, you may know that PEI is working to obtain a province-wide basic income. There was an all-party report that called for immediate discussions with the federal government. It was released in 2020 and accepted by the PEI legislature unanimously. All party leaders in the province have recently reaffirmed their commitment to a PEI basic income. And there is currently a group of ex-politicians, current politicians, staffers, and economists discussing what that might look like in order to help support PEI's efforts to engage the federal government. So anything that can be done to support PEI and its initiative, that could be the foot in the door that then expands throughout Canada, just as Saskatchewan was the foot in the door for universal health care. And with that, I thank you. I hope that that was useful.
I appreciated that, Mandy, the presentation, and I've heard you speak before, but I found it very clear and certainly certainly putting forth all of the arguments why we need a universal basic income now. It's so important, and I think our group should. I mean, it just so aligns with what we are doing, what we believe, what we say, and I think we need to support that. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. And I wanted to acknowledge that Colleen has been part of the discussions around this consensus document. I also want to say hi to Amy. I see her over there. Amy is a strong supporter of a basic income and has been a very compelling speaker in some of the conferences we've held on basic income.
So thank you so much, Mandy. We really appreciate you coming and speaking to us today. And I really wanted to really, again, thank you for engaging us in this issue, furthering us along in our mandate here to create a poverty-free Nova Scotia. So what I would ask, if there's any questions directly to Mandy on her presentation, this would be a good time, but we are going to move to a resolution next to talk more about a basic income. So I'd ask first if there's any further questions to Mandy, and then I'll turn it over to Colleen to put a resolution on the floor.
I guess I have a question. Did you want me to leave when the resolution comes up so that you could have a discussion without me present, or would you prefer? Does it matter?
I think we'd like to have you there in case there's questions about the resolution itself, which I wouldn't be surprised since I put it together. We might need to tweak it or something, and I think it might be helpful if you're there to help us with that if that's necessary.
Okay. Happy to stay.
Okay.
I also want to clarify the basic income that we advocate for, and that is described in the consensus statement, and that is basic income for people who need it. So what that means is that it would not be given to everybody. It would be given to people. It would be income tested, and it would gradually reduce with increased employment income. up to a maximum level. So we do not advocate for one where a basic income is given to the wealthy. It just doesn't make sense to us.
Oh, Mark, question.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation, Mandy. You mentioned that there are two bills, one in the Senate and the other in the House of Commons. Do you have, do those bills match what basic income Atlantic Canada is looking for, and are there substantive differences between those bills? Which do you think is better? Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for that question, Mark. Those bills are not defining what a basic income would look like, but those bills are calling for a framework, a national framework to be developed around a basic income. And both of them are exactly the same. The bill in the Senate was introduced by Senator Kim Pate. The bill in the House was introduced by Leah Gazan, and both of them introduced the same bill, 1 hour apart. So, so it would behoove us as advocates for basic income to ensure that the framework that's developed, if the bill passes, if those bills pass, is the basic income we want, which is why I think it's just critically important that we always talk about the basic income we want.
Okay, I had a question, well, more of a comment, but because it's kind of a, I've heard it stated or suggested, and I tend to agree with this approach because a lot of the money goes to like bureaucracy stuff that doesn't really matter. So why not cut everyone a check, and then if you're rich, they call it back and tax it? Why can't we do that?
Well, my response to that is that it's much more expensive if you give a basic income to everybody and then claw it back in taxes. And also, if you consider the percentage of taxes that people pay as their income increases, it never reaches 100% at a particular income level, and so it would not all be clawed back. And I just don't see how that's a way to behave, to give money to the wealthy. So that would be my response to those statements. I don't think that the bureaucracy that would be created would be anywhere near the bureaucracy that is currently exists within the social assistance programs that we have in our provinces. I think CERB showed that there could be developed very simple application and oversight processes through the taxation system. I'm not saying that's the way it will develop. I'm not saying that's the only way it could be administered, but I am saying that the bureaucracy would be substantially reduced under that in those types of formats.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize it would be more expensive to do it the other way. I thought it'd be cheaper.
Yeah, it's substantially more expensive. One of the reports that I referenced in my slides, and I gave the slides to Alex, so I'm happy to have those shared. The policy options document that was developed by Basic Income Canada Network had 3 models. The first model was provided to people between the ages of 18 and 64. The second model brought in people who were seniors so that they also would receive the basic income instead of OAS-GIS. And the third model gave it to everybody. And the third model was substantially more expensive than the other two. It could, again, they manipulated, well, maybe that's not the right word, but they suggested ways that we could develop a more equitable taxation system in Canada that could pay for any one of those three models, but yeah, but it is substantial. And so organizations that I've been involved in, like BICN, like Coalition Canada, would suggest that it's just not sellable to the Canadian public because of that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. It's a good question.
Okay, so with that, Colleen, maybe in our last 15 minutes, I'll turn it over to you to read the resolution. We'll ask for a supporter and then we can debate and discuss it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alex. So I present this resolution on basic income. Whereas the Nova Scotia Action Coalition for Community Wellbeing is a coalition of community organizations and members dedicated to working strategically and collaboratively towards community well-being and a better quality of life for everyone. It exists to connect a community of action-oriented organizations and people who are committed to social inclusion and building a Nova Scotia where no one lives in poverty. Whereas Basic Income Now Atlantic Canada is a coalition of Atlantic Canadian organizations and individual advocates working in solidarity to call for the implementation of a basic income. They have reached consensus regarding the approach to a basic income program that they believe would greatly benefit the lives and well-being of Atlantic Canadians, as well as the social, economic, and cultural prosperity of the region. Whereas both these coalitions exist to achieve well-being for all people in Atlantic Canada by eliminating poverty, be it resolved that NSACCW support the consensus paper drafted by Basic Income Now Atlantic Canada and join Atlantic Canada Basic Income Coalition for their call for the implementation of a basic income. Respectfully submitted by me, Colleen. And I might, yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, Mandy, I'm not sure of all of the wording of that. We certainly want to support the consensus. I would assume, and you mentioned in your thing, there is joining the Basic Income Nova Scotia, which is not in the resolution, but if we're going to join the Atlantic, I presume we would want to join a Nova Scotia coalition, but I'm not sure about that. So questions, comments from everybody? You're on mute, Alex.
Rookie mistake. Before I do that, we just need a seconder to the motion that.
Oh, okay.
I second. It's Vicky.
Yeah. So again, anyone can speak to the resolution at this point in time.
I'm just wondering if you would indulge me and read it again.
Sure. From the top. Okay. Whereas the Nova Scotia Action Coalition for Community Wellbeing is a coalition of community organizations and members dedicated to working strategically and collaboratively towards community well-being and a better quality of life for everyone. It exists to connect a community of action-oriented organizations and people who are committed to social inclusion and building a Nova Scotia where no one lives in poverty. Whereas Basic Income Now Atlantic Canada is a coalition of Atlantic Canadian organizations and individual advocates working in solidarity to call for the implementation of a basic income. They have reached consensus regarding the approach to a basic income program that they believe would greatly benefit the lives and well-being of Atlantic Canadians, as well as the social, economic, and cultural prosperity of the region. Whereas both these coalitions exist to achieve well-being for all people in Atlantic Canada by eliminating poverty, be it resolved that NSACCW support the consensus paper drafted by Basic Income Now Atlantic Canada and join Atlantic Canada Basic Income Now Coalition in their call for the implementation of a basic income.
Thank you. Okay, got it.
All right.
Oh, you found paper. That's awesome.
Any other, if anyone wants to speak to the resolution, this is the time to do so.
Colleen, can I just answer your question about joining Basic Income Nova Scotia? It is a group of individuals, and so any individuals here are absolutely welcome to join, and please let me know if you're interested. But I don't think it needs to be included in your resolution. I think it's a beautiful resolution.
Oh, thank you. I copied and pasted, so if anybody goes checking for plagiarism, they'll find it.
Mark, please.
I just wanted to speak in favor of the resolution. I think it's a great idea to support this project, and I'd especially underline how important it is to move away from the current model of income assistance, which is incredibly punitive and focused on surveillance. And I think that bureaucracy is just unsalvageable. Thank you.
I agree. Let's just do this thing.
Okay. I'm going to give one more minute in case anyone would like to speak.
I think Amy's giving thumbs up, I think.
Okay.
She's on mute.
Okay.
Then I will call for a vote. You can either just say yay or put your hand or thumbs up or anything to indicate that you are positively moving forward with this motion.
Yay! I did all three.
Yay.
Yay.
Excellent.
Thumbs up.
Okay, I will also call for, that's great. I'll also call for anyone who is voting against the motion. All right, we shall call that carried then. Good work, Colleen and everyone.
Thanks.
All right, well, that wraps up our agenda for this year's AGM, 8 minutes early. I don't know that I've been to an AGM that's ended early yet this year, so congratulations, everyone.
Bro.
We, the coordinating committee will be meeting throughout the summer. I'll be sending out some details on that shortly. And then the coalition is scheduled to meet again in September. So I'll send out some notices there as well. I really hope that everyone can enjoy the summer. I know it's incredibly tough out there right now. And that folks are incredibly struggling at this very moment. If something emerges that you believe that we need to speak to quickly throughout the summer from a political level, that is why we are here, is so that we can speak out in a more distinct way than an organization being able to do it. So let us know, as I know there's a lot on the go, a lot of heartache happening.
I would just say before we end, Alex.
Yeah. Everyone's getting that delay, eh?
Thank you. Yes, just to thank you for your leadership over the year.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Happy to do it. Privileged to do it. And again, we'll look at what we need to do from there. Amy, I see you're on mute. Are you able to unmute yourself? Go for it, Amy.
Okay, because I couldn't get in till, I apologize, Mandy, that I missed part of you. And and so if there was a business meeting first, am I still whatever I was before?
Yeah, until you indicate otherwise, you are still Amy Moonshadow, who brings strength and power to everything we do.
Yes.
And I'm hoping you will continue on the coordinating committee. So you're there unless you say otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
I'm with you all the way.
All right. We'll call the meeting adjourned then.
Bye,
Have a
Vic.
good weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Have a great day.